Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I am so honored to be joined by, honestly, one of my favorite guests. I know I tell everybody that it's such an honor to be here with them, and it is, but Janet, you are always one of my favorite guests. You always have such a bubbly personality, and you're a wonderful person in the audio medium. So, Janet Bixler, Director of First Year Experience, is our guest today on the Nightly News Podcast. Janet, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be back.
Well, the first thing that I really want to talk about is a really unique initiative. Obviously, we are going to get to our discussion about the first year experience and how that's been going, maybe some of the things that have happened during the fall term that allowed you to, continue the expansion of that program. But I really want to start off with this idea of the Alumni Adventures that you were recently part of. I just wanted to read a little bit about this. Central Penn College Alumni Association announced that there is a new program for the 12,000 plus living alumni called Alumni Adventures. This special benefit is a new alumni group travel program. It provides planned by travel and tourism professionals at an affordable rate to be enjoyed by alumni and their families and friends. So the very first international trip, of course, there's been a couple national trips here in the U.S., was to Iceland. So I want to know all about this experience. I did see some pictures of you on social media enjoying the sights and sounds of Iceland, but let's kind of start at the beginning. What was it about this trip that said to you, like, I have to do this? Like, I want to go, I want to be a part of this, and I want to experience this with our alumni.
Well, first, I am not an alumni, but being a staff member here at the school, the opportunity was presented. And I love to travel in general. And I said to myself, it's time. If you're going to travel, let's do it. So the opportunity presented itself, and I wanted to travel. Pretty much didn't care where. It also was a great deal because of how it was organized. So it was economically feasible. And then another exciting part was I was going to be able to see the Northern Lights. Ironically enough, I did not see the Northern Lights because I slept through the night the lights came out.
Well, that's a very important point because we talked about this off air. If you go there, there isn't necessarily any guarantee that you're actually going to see the lights. It's sort of a hope and see type of situation, right?
Correct.
Explain a little bit more about that because that was something that I didn't even realize.
So the Northern Lights only are visible to the naked eye certain times of the year when it's generally really cold and really clear out. And then there's a solar activity that happens that allows these colors to be refracted.
I like that word.
I know. And then you're able to see colors of green and blue, sometimes pink and red in the sky. Well, again, Mother Nature is not predictable. So when we arrived, it was a gorgeous day. Everybody told us be prepared for it to be cold, rainy, and windy. It was barely cold, barely rainy, and hardly at all windy. We had lots of blue skies. Some days were a little overcast, but again, the temperature was great. We did dress appropriately. We did dress warmly, but it wasn't ever a period of like, I'm freezing. And we only had one moment of rain, which produced the most phenomenal double rainbow when we were at the ocean. So that's all good. Well, so the day we arrived, we had most of the day all to ourselves. So I filled that with doing a lot of things in the town we were staying, Selfoss, which is about an hour plus to Reykjavik, which is the capital of Iceland. And so it's a small town, and I'm very much into swimming, and Iceland has a culture for swimming, and they actually, in every town in Iceland, they have a public pool, and the public pool is open year-round outside because of the biothermic waters that are naturally running under the land surface. they can heat all the pools naturally and efficiently and economically with this natural, very hot water. So they swim outside.
So it's sort of like a hot spring type of situation.
Right, but this is a lap pool for swimming, and
That is so
even
cool.
and the pool I went to, which was right in the town where we stayed, was kind of it was a recreation center, so it had a big gym, and then next door was one of their public schools. And while I was there, they had small children doing swimming lessons in the indoor pool, but in the outdoor pool, which is the one where I swam in, they had middle school students doing swim lessons.
Wow.
And it was really cold. It was like 30 degrees. And the water was maybe between 80 or 90
Oh my
degrees.
gosh.
And, you had to walk from the locker room outside into the pool. So that was really cold. And then when you were wet going back, that was cold.
Yeah.
And when I was doing the backstroke, I thought my face was going to freeze off. But it was phenomenal and so refreshing. And the country is so clean. And they are very particular about individuals being clean. They have a lot of rules and regulations about using their public pools and their hot springs, so that everything stays clean and germ-free and oils-free and all that. So that was great. So I really had a full day. And then we had a big dinner. Sheep are very revered, highly revered in Iceland. They can roam free throughout the spring and summer months. And then in September, they do a big event where they all get together and they wrangle the sheep together and return the sheep to their homes, because
That
they
is
can
so interesting.
roam the country. And the sheep are highly revered, but they also eat the sheep. So we had lamb at dinner, and it was very, very good. But then I thought I was feeling a little allergic to something, so I took some Benadryl. I hadn't slept on the plane going to Iceland, had a really full day swimming and walking all over the place. So I fell asleep. We were told to put our name on the paper at the front desk, and then the hotel would send us a phone call when the Northern Lights popped out. But I did not want to put my name on the phone list because I didn't want the phone to jar me and disorient me. So I set an alarm on my own phone to wake me up around 10 p.m.
You didn't set the calculator, did you?
No, the alarm went off, and I looked out my window because they said, if you look out your window, you'll see something and then you'll know to come out. Well, I was on the town side of the hotel, not the lake side. There was already lights from the town, so I didn't see anything, and I was super groggy from the Benadryl, so I went back to bed. Then I heard people running down the hallway, and I was like, wonder what that's about. But I was super groggy, went back to sleep. They were running because all the Northern Lights came out
Oh,
right
man.
near the hotel, at the church, above the cemetery, and it was such an amazing landscape. The pictures I saw, which are some of them are on our app by other people that went on the trip, they could actually see some of it with their naked eye. But right now, or when we were there, the best pictures of the Northern Lights happened because you were seeing it through your camera, and the camera could capture the colors, whereas the naked eye might just see like a weird shaped cloud going across the sky. But that first night, they could actually see colors with their naked
Wow.
eye. But the photos were better. Then I learned it wouldn't have done me any good, kind of, because my phone is old and it can't do night pictures. So I wouldn't have captured anything anyways. So
Hey, maybe staying in bed actually helped you for the rest of the trip. I don't want to get too far off track because I do want to come back to the FYE, but maybe tell us maybe two other memories that you created or interesting things that you did while you were there, just to kind of get a sense of what these alumni adventures actually are for people that might want to do this in the future.
well, the biggest memory is our Icelandic tour guide. So we had really full days. After the first day, which was on our own, we had full days. She was phenomenal. The stories she told us, the history, going to Iceland, you should go there wanting to learn about the land because it is so unique, really formed by volcanoes, and the majority of the land is all volcanic fields. So you're really learning about how these people have survived for centuries on a land that can't really produce resources. And you're learning about the landscape, and you're learning about the volcanoes, and you're learning about the glaciers, and the reality that the glaciers produce the purest water all over the world is the purest water in Iceland, partly because it's filtered through the lava fields. And everything tastes better in Iceland because the water is so pure. So that was amazing. We went to a hydroponic greenhouse that was created 30 years ago by a husband and wife team. They now have 5 children. They run this with 23 employees. Going into this greenhouse, because you can't grow anything in Iceland. and greenhouses are a thing, but they created a business and they only farm tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, medium tomatoes, and the really big tomatoes. They farm year round, 24 hours a day.
Wow.
They harvest the tomatoes every day and they ship the tomatoes out every day. And they gave us tomatoes to eat, and it's not like a tomato I've ever tasted. It's just purely a different vegetable.
That's
and it's
awesome.
so light and refreshing. And in this greenhouse, which you can maybe picture what a greenhouse typically looks like, just plants growing and dirt, they had a restaurant inside the greenhouse.
Wow, that's so
They
cool.
had a bar inside the greenhouse, all incorporated within the greenhouse. And then at the bar, everything was made from the tomatoes. So you had all these different Bloody Marys and you had tomato soup. And oh my goodness, that was just crazy amazing. And then the horses, Icelandic horses are pure and unique to Iceland. They are born with the ability to perform 5 gaits, whereas other horses around the world only are born with the ability to perform 3. And the 5th gait of an Icelandic horse literally appears as if they're flying above the track. You can't train other horses to do these other 2 gaits. Icelandic horses can be bought and taken to other countries. They can never return because the Icelandic horses never receive any vaccines because it's very pure and isolated. And so they have some normal little medical issues that horses have, but they can cure them with the medicine they have. They don't have to vaccinate. I don't know. It's a very clean country. It's a very welcoming country. The landscape is crazy. The fact that you can go to where the tectonic plates are between North America and Eurasia, and you see that they've been spreading apart. And each year, Iceland grows bigger by centimeters because they continue to spread.
Wow.
And there's a valley between the plates now that has existed for quite a while called the Rift Valley. And that is neutral space, neutral land, and a lot of peace meetings have happened on that land. Peace is huge in Iceland. They have monuments and sculptures dedicated to peace. That's where Reagan and Gorbachev met to talk about ending the Cold War. They met in a home that was once owned by a poet who wrote about peace, like that was his genre. They have a church that took 40 years to build in Reykjavik because it's actually a poor country, and tourist dollars are one of their main income-producing situations. And at this church in Reykjavik, they have every year a different art installation dedicated to social justice. And they have a street leading up to the church from down in the center of Reykjavik. It's uphill to the church, and it's painted like the rainbow because Iceland believes in being all accepting. It's not just an LGBTQ principle, but to be accepting of all. And they are very welcoming of individuals who need refugee. They brought in a lot of Ukrainians. They brought in a lot of Vietnamese people during the Vietnam War.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know what else to say. Like I could go
think
on
that's
and
good.
on.
I think that's
If you
good.
go, totally do fly over Iceland, which I know the younger alums rolled their eyes at me because I was totally in love with it, but they've all been to Disney. But it's an interactive ride where your chair moves like you're inside a helicopter and the wind and the water on your face. But the panoramic, what you're flying through of all the seasons of Iceland and all the different terrains of Iceland. Oh my gosh.
That's so awesome. And again, Janet, thank you so much for sharing a bit more about this alumni adventure. If you'd like more information about future alumni adventure events, please reach out to our engagement office. I will put that email along with our podcast. Well, I wanted to take the rest of the time here on the podcast to talk about what you do here as a professional here at Central Penn College. You are the director of the first year experience. And what that is a program for, it's almost like an orientation type of program for new students here on campus to not only understand what Central Penn has to offer in terms of campus life, but also what Central Penn has to offer in terms of campus services. And so this has been a program that you have actually now gone through an entire year of the program. And so I just kind of want to talk about what it is, maybe some growth that you've seen, and maybe some of the other programming that you've done. So first, one of the things that you'd mentioned to me was that one of the key pieces to this was that you wanted to debrief after each term, basically going back, reflecting on, both the good and the bad of the FYE program each year. So talk to me about sort of how this program has evolved over the first year based on some of this reflection that you've done.
So one of the big initiatives in the first year experiences for residential students where we work with housing. And during move-in weekend, we host the Claiming the Castle program where we work with the new students, residential, to help them go through 3 different sessions, one on establishing healthy boundaries and communicating their boundaries. The next session is about how do you communicate with people you're living with in a way that they can hear what you're saying. So it's about intent versus impact. How do you deal with things you've heard and processing if you're being overly sensitive, or, what is your reaction to what you've heard? And then the third session is about if you're in conflict and you make a choice of how you're going to deal with the conflict, what is the domino effect of that choice? So if you're going to choose to report it, you're going to lose some autonomy. Are you ready to lose the autonomy and have somebody else solve your problem? And what's the domino effect? Or if you're going to discuss it, while that sounds like the ideal way, the students have really broken down the domino effect of discussing it, where it might not always be the best option if people aren't ready to actually talk. Well, that's just going a little specific into that third session. But the great thing about Claiming the Castle, now that it has done a full year of programming, so we offer Claiming the Castle 4 times a year with each new group of residential students that move in. And now this fall was our 5th season of Claiming the Castle. We had 60 students come in and do the program. And the great thing about this season, the fall 2020 group of Claiming the Castle, I had a lot. I think I had 10 or 12 returning student leaders work with me to host small group discussions around the importance of boundary setting and communicating boundaries. So they came to me, and the reason I had all those current students willing to help is that each time Claiming the Castle ended, I would pull students aside and say, what worked, what didn't work in Claiming the Castle? What do we need? How are we going to help the students live in harmony with each other? Where is it working? Where is it not working? And the students would be candid with me. And then I said to some students, I'd really love to have some current students help me lead some sessions. And they showed interest. So I held a pretty lengthy training with our current students on how to lead small group discussion. And then they interacted with the students during the first session on boundary setting, and it was really helpful. They were all in small groups. The new students were able to relate to the current students. The current students really gave the new students time to talk about their concerns about living with strangers and what boundaries needed to be set. So that's a big win, and the current students were very serious about their responsibility.
Well, and I love the fact that you're not only working with the new students, but you're working with the student leaders on campus to help develop this, because when you're trying to put together a program for students, no better people than students to give you input. But I do want to make a really quick point. Not only are you responsible for working with the residential students, you're working with all of our new students across the board. You've done a variety of things, like we've done the meet and greet with Eats here on campus. You've also done that virtually as well. So talk to us a little bit about that virtual meet, greet, and Eats program that you've done.
So like with Claiming the Castle, I work with the housing department. With Meet, Greet, and Eats, I work with our engagement department. Adrian Thoman and I really work hand in hand with the Meet, Greet, and Eats, and we both said, we need to offer something for our online students. And now for 2 terms, during week 1 or week 2, we offer the Meet, Greet, and Eat. We call it a different name now because there's really no eating happening.
Right. I mean, I suppose that people can eat at their homes.
Yeah, and that so
A virtual luncheon.
So I believe we call it the FYE Night Social, and we invite online students to join us on Zoom with a couple faculty, a couple staff, and we set up that virtual meet and greet in a way where we play some online friendly virtual games just to get to know each other, and it focuses a little bit on Central Penn College. Then we have opportunities for student leaders to share tips of success specifically related to online student learning and student success. So our current students who are succeeding on the online platform, they come in, they give some tips. We also then have a time for Q&A from our online students so that they can ask questions to the faculty and staff that are present. Typically, we will have Kim Bateman with us. So the students at the beginning of the term, because we do this week 1 or 2, will be able to ask Blackboard questions. We are still working really hard to boost that attendance, but the students that have been there with us these 2 times that we've offered it, they've found it really beneficial. They've really enjoyed it.
And another thing, another initiative, which I just kind of briefly want to mention, is another really important thing that if you go to cpcnightlynews.com, a recent story was just published about the Nights at the Round Table. That is where you bring some of these groups of FYE students in to have direct access to Dr. Linda Fedrizzi Williams, the president of Central Penn College. I tell these students all the time that they don't know how lucky they are to have that amount of access to the college president. I don't know about your particular situation. I know that when I went to school, if the president walked in my class, I wouldn't even know who it was. And you're talking about a situation here where not only do you know who she is, she's coming, she's answering frank and openly to questions that people have. I just love this. So I just wanted to make a note that was another one of the programs that you do. But before we get out of here, I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about something that you've been working with students on, an interactive board. So talk to us a little bit about this and how people can get involved.
Well, I have a student worker, Emmy Brown. She went through Claiming the Castle. She went through my CPC Foundations course, and now she's my student worker. And one of her responsibilities is to create an interactive bulletin board up here, right on the other side of the podcast studio here in Milano, where she will post questions or other items that she would like students to interact with. So currently, if you come by, she created a turkey, and the board is labeled CPC Thankful. What are you grateful for? Or share your gratitude. And she went around and interviewed faculty, staff, and students about specifically what they are grateful for here at Central Penn College. And on the
I did participate in that.
You did. And on the turkey's feathers, made out of Emmy's hands, she wrote what the students are thankful for, or the faculty staff, and wrote their name. And then we posted an image of the bulletin board on the CPC app and encouraged students to respond in the comments what they are thankful for. So I'll have Emmy repost it again in the next day or so to try to get some more responses.
Love it.
But she found it really, really helpful to, there's always something we all can complain about. Life is that way. But when she engaged the students, faculty, and staff, they were real specific about different things that they are thankful for here at Central Penn College. Several students mentioned all the support systems we have. Some students mentioned that they were able to make real quality friendships. Some students mentioned they're thankful for the accelerated program. So come on over to Milano and read all the feathers on our turkey, but we'd love for you to go ahead and find it on the app and let us know what you're thankful for.
We're going to take it out, and I'm going to read to you exactly what I wrote to Emily, and this is why I'm thankful. This is what I said. I am thankful for Central Penn because I have the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. I struggled as a first-generation college student, but was fortunate enough to have a faculty member that genuinely cared about me and went out of his way to make sure I was successful. It was that interaction that showed me that I wanted to make a difference for people, and I have the opportunity to do that here at Central Penn. The fact that I get to work so closely to mentor my students is so valuable to me in my life. So that was what I said there.
That's
well,
wonderful.
Janet, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, we'll have you again on in the future to talk a bit more about the FYE program, but it was so nice to also hear about your trip to Iceland. I'm so glad you got to take that opportunity to work with and kind of be there with our alumni members, and it's always such a pleasure to have you on.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure of all the questions you ask. I do want one more shout out.
Sure.
For the Alumni Association here at Central Penn College. They worked so hard on putting together that trip. It was truly seamless. We had an American tour guide with us and an Icelandic tour guide the entire time. Both tour guides mentioned how easygoing and enjoyable our tour group was. There were about 50 people on our tour group. We all really did get along. We did a lot of bonding. We had people as young as 17 and people in their 70s on the tour.
Wow.
The Alumni Association actually treated us to lunch one day as a surprise, which was super. We were all very thankful for that. And just a big shout out to the Alumni Association and all those, Mary Beth and Michael Fedor, who really worked to organize it and make it a great trip. They have 2 trips coming up in 2023, and one I wish I really could go on. It's actually in the States. It's in San Francisco.
I saw that. And that's actually during break, too. Just a good shout out. All right. Well, Janet, thank you so very much for joining us today. As always, it's always such a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
Of course. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. A special thanks goes out to the Director of First Year Experience, Janet Bixler. This is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll see you again next time on the Nightly News Podcast.
Hey guys, it's Community Relations Coordinator Curtis Voelker, and you're tuned in to the Nightly News Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'm so honored to be joined by the Director of Community Engagement, Curtis Voelker. Curtis, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Professor Miller, thanks for having me back.
You know, it seems like it's sort of right around this holiday season each and every year when we have you on, and certainly it just sort of works out that way. So you're sort of coming on behalf of Project Paul from CPC Gives Back. So today I want to talk a little bit more about what CPC Gives Back is, what Project Paw is, and sort of, and again, not everything has been tallied, but just a general idea of the success of this initiative this year. So always such a pleasure to have you, and I can't even think about how many times we've had you on now. It's probably been 6 or 7, right?
Well, as many times as I come on, we always have our running joke of where are my tallies stacking up against Adrian Thoman. So I know I'm still trailing, but I'm going to keep trying. And Dalton's giving us a smirk here as well.
Adrian is certainly on every term, but we try to have her on. But certainly we'll love to have you back in either winter or spring when the new CPC Gives Back kicks off. We can talk about that a little bit more. Also being joined by Dalton Kohler. Dalton is one of the fine members of the Nightly News Media Club and also one of our producers and commentators for Knights basketball. So Dalton, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here, Professor.
All right. Well, one of the things that I want to do to sort of kick things off here is, Curtis, part of what you do here, and I do highlight part of what you do
Oh,
here.
it's we, Paul.
I of course, yes. I will say, just sort of to preface, I am on the committee, but Curtis is really not only the one that's sort of coordinating all of this stuff, but also is the one who is in charge of, developing some of these connections. So let's just start off at the top with a very important question. I suppose in case you've been living under a rock might be a good preface here, but in case you are unaware of what CPC Gives Back is, talk to us a little bit about not only what it is, but what it's become over the last couple of years.
Absolutely. So this may be a recap for some of our listeners who are dedicated to the podcast each and every episode. But for potential new listeners, about 3 years ago, right around the pandemic, we launched our CPC Gives Back program, which was an opportunity for the college to really choose an entire institutional philanthropic campaign. We've done many multiple smaller campaigns through individual clubs, activities, and groups of students, which is awesome, and they continue to happen, but we wanted something to come together all from one institution, students, faculty, staff, alumni together, and that's where CPC Gives Back came from. So our first year, we supported food insecurity. Our second year was housing insecurity and homelessness, and year 3 here is Project Paul, helping our local area animal shelters. And each year, around the beginning of the year, we have a process where we ask from our college community, students, faculty, staff, alumni, what would you like to support this year? What area, what industry, what organizations do you want us to talk to? And one of our students actually suggested helping out pets through the pandemic, and it morphed into helping 7 local area animal shelters.
Let me tell you so one thing I will say is, again, we do have a small committee of not only Curtis and myself and Adrian, but others as well, that not only kind of puts together these proposals and sort of fields some of these inquiries in terms of, students, faculty, and staff, but one of the biggest things that we are responsible for doing is sort of the execution of it. One of the very interesting things that I found out in some of the volunteer work that I did with the Harrisburg Humane Society, they actually have seen a massive increase in the number of dogs that have been coming in post-pandemic
Yes.
because a lot of people got animals
Yes.
during the pandemic and realized, oh crap, I can't take care of these animals. So all the more. So I mean, it is very interesting how the different levels of through CPC Gives Back, the different things like you wouldn't necessarily have associated like, hey, these organizations need help because of what happened during the pandemic, but it absolutely is the case.
And thanks to our student, Brian Strawhacker, who submitted the nomination, he hit those exact points you mentioned, Paul.
Super interesting, and we can talk more about that. Dalton, volunteering is no strange thing to you either. We were talking off air about some of the experiences that you've had volunteering in the past. You want to share some of those with us?
Yeah, so most of the volunteer places I have worked at was, again, I said it was through my church, where basically I've done Pumpkin Fest, where basically just people come out and they do a bunch of, cool events, like with pumpkins, basically just like kind of a cornhole with a pumpkin, or just kind of like weird stuff like that. But it is a really nice event. A lot of people come out to it. I've also done different missions with my church group. I also remember, I was thinking about it more, I was thinking about a time where my baseball team, we held a baseball camp on our varsity field, and we actually had one of our former alumni who actually played for the San Francisco Giants came out and ran the camp. Yeah.
Speaking of which, you also did some volunteering last year, something that I was a part of, and I totally forgot to mention that in our pre-show meeting. But tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I just remember about Challenger Baseball. That was an absolutely amazing experience, just to be there. And even though I thought it was kind of just like a little thing for us, it really, really had a huge impact on the players themselves and the parents that were always coming up to us. I know I also did it with my teammates, Kevon Davis and Blake Myers. They were there as well. And all the time, the parents were coming up saying, wow, this is a really nice thing you guys are doing for these kids. They really like you guys. They really enjoy you being here. They really like your company and stuff like that. It was just a really, really humbling experience, too.
Just to give a little bit of context, so I'm the commissioner of the senior league with Challenger Baseball, and we have about 25 to 30 young people who are coming out to be a part of our Challenger Baseball League. And the gentleman from the Central Penn baseball team came out on 3 different weekends last year to not only help me out a little bit, but to really kind of mentor some of these young people. And hopefully that's something that we can make happen again this year.
I would definitely be looking forward to that.
They loved you guys, and I appreciate it so much. So the point that I was trying to get here, Dalton, is clearly you see giving back to not only even your local community, but your broader community at large is a very important thing of what it means to you to be a college student. It's one of our core values here at Central Penn. So what were some of the benefits that you've seen, not only just for yourself, of course, volunteering in the community does lift our own spirits, but what were some of the benefits that you've seen in the people that you were working to help?
Well, like I mentioned with the Challenger Baseball, really just the big thing for me was seeing all the kids, even though they were 18 and old, they were still just out there just enjoying the game, and then we were there helping them out, just trying to make them have a good time. It was really a really nice experience. And then with the stuff I've done in my hometown volunteer work, it was just really nice to all these events I went to and really see how much people were actually impacted by it, and how much of a great time they actually had. And I remember with the Pumpkin Fest, every single year we would be done, and everyone that showed up and had a really good time and played all the little games or whatever, all the little events, was like, hey, I can't wait for this next year. This is such a cool event. This is really a really nice thing you guys are putting together. It's something, there's not much else going on in this little town, so it's really nice that we can do something like this to get the whole community involved, and like that. That's a really great time.
I just want to put a little exclamation point on this. I saw it because I had the chance to work with these young people each and every week. And yet you guys were there, 3 different times. But even in the times that after I think we were on break, a couple of the people came up and were like, is Kevon and Dalton and Blake coming over today? Super excited. And I was like, no, they're on break right now. But it's something I've talked to Coach Stern about you guys doing again this year. But my point to all of this is, when you are giving back to your local community, it not only benefits you, and sure, you can put the things on resumes, and that is important too, but really it's what impact you're making. And so, Curtis, back to you. We talked about where this all kind of came from, but you are really the one that is seeing the impact. So over the last 2 years, were there any memories that you have of just a really impactful part of this in terms of community relations, whether it's dropping off food or dropping off monetary sanitary checks, maybe seeing the facilities of some of the places that you're at and understanding to what extent you're helping them.
Exactly to that point, dropping off the items as we've done a couple times each year, no matter what the cause may be, and actually seeing the facilities of where all of this great work is happening. Yes, that's definitely one of the most memorable parts, is really seeing what goes in and out every single day in terms of the teams of people that are there, the volunteers that are needed. There's so much going on at these organizations and facilities every day that a lot of us are not aware about, and there's so many different ways to support. So now that we've been able to have, 3 years in a row CPC Gives Back, and the community is starting to understand, hey, there's a new way that we can partner with Central Penn College right in our backyard to help out local area organizations. It kind of creates a snowball effect of people jumping in and raising their hand saying, hey, how can I help now? I've been seeing this. I want in on the fun.
When I think about the last couple of years, the things that are so memorable to me, of course, raising money and raising items, all that is so wonderful and needed. Let's be honest. Like, in the end, that's what these nonprofit organizations need is cash to pursue their mission and items in order to get them farther down the road. But the biggest impact that I've had is actually going there, whether it was with the New Hope Ministries back in 2020 or even this year going to the Humane Society. So myself and Steve Hassinger and Kristen Fike all of us part of our team, got to volunteer 2 different occasions at the Harrisburg Humane Society. And I will tell you, it's hard to really explain, because on one hand, you want to be sad.
Yeah.
That all of these animals are sort of in this position. But the wonderful lady at Harrisburg Humane Society, Christy, if you're listening, I appreciate all the kindness over there. You know what she said? When we first got there, we had a task, and then she gave us a tour of the facility. And she said to us before we walked in, she said, I can understand how walking through this could be a sad situation. But remember that all of these animals are here because wherever they came from was much, much, much worse.
Very good point.
And so when you think about, yes, it's sad that all of these animals need homes, at least they're in a caring environment where they're going to get their basic needs taken care of. And hopefully, ideally, in all certain circumstances, these animals will have an opportunity to have a better life when they're adopted. I myself am a guinea pig lover. I have 3 different guinea pigs at my own home. And gosh, it was so hard to leave these poor little guinea pigs there. But again, part of the reason some of those animals are there are because people think that way. And they're like, well, I'm just going to buy 3 more, and then they can't take care of them, and it's not a good situation there either. So it's just entirely changed my perspective. I'd never really volunteered at the Humane Society before, and trust me, what we were doing wasn't glamorous, but it was needed, and it was something that was helpful. And I'll tell you what, I've never gotten so much thanks from an organization that I volunteered with before as I did with the Humane Society. But I got to be honest with you, it helps us get involved, right? It helps us to not only just, yes, it's great, I'm going to give money, being in the thick of it, being in the weeds with these organizations and seeing what they're going through on a day-to-day basis provides some perspective. And gosh, it's an experience I'll never forget.
And that's why I really like, Paul, with our committee each year, I kind of liked the style or the method we've gone about in terms of providing opportunity for people to get involved. The 3 main pillars of getting involved in CPC Gives Back is monetary donation, item donation, or service hours. So, time, talent, treasury type of saying, there are many different ways that anyone here at the college or the community could join us and get involved and give back.
One of the things, and this is the last piece I want to talk about, and then maybe we can talk about some of the almost final results.
Sure.
I have the fine opportunity to work with students, Dalton included, and one of the things that I'm sure he probably gets sick of hearing me say is how important it is to be civically minded. Mm-hmm. And that can be a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And in fact, one of the most common things I hear, certainly from our students, is time, right? Is time to actually do the volunteering. But here's what's really interesting. A lot of places now are doing some type of like virtual or at home volunteering, where if you have an extra hour or 2, or you have a specific skill set that you can help participate. And so I just want to point out there to anybody who, and trust me, especially around the holidays, I know that we're all on a time crunch. but you have to remember that it's more just about a state of mind that you want to give back to your community. That doesn't mean you need to volunteer 10 to 20 hours a week or even a month. It's just knowing that when you're doing this, it's not a chore. It's something you should enjoy. And that's why, like, when we were talking earlier, that's why, like, the Challenger didn't necessarily resonate to you, because to you, that was just something fun that you got to do and share the love of baseball.
Exactly.
And I do the same. Like, that's why I do it. I mean, you want to talk about someone who's busy, like, I would say I rank up there with almost anyone.
Yeah.
But that is something that to me means so much to my life and who I am. And that's what I try to impart in my students. And I hope I do a good job with that, Dalton.
No, you definitely do.
Thanks. Well, we're moving toward the final segment here, and I do want to keep in mind that this is being recorded prior to the end of Project Paul. So I want to point out that these are sort of temporary numbers, and Curtis, feel free to give whatever you feel is appropriate at this point, being as it's not final. But can you just sort of give us an overview on how this initiative has gone to this point?
And it's going to kind of sound like the Sunday Night Football picks as you go around the horn, and there we go. Dalton can relate there with the sports background for sure. So at the time of this recording, we're about 1 week away from the final tally of monetary donations. Right at this time of recording, we're right around $1,300 away from our goal of raising $7,000 through this campaign.
That's amazing.
And yeah, it really is. And there's some significance to this. There's 7 local area organizations we've chosen. So if we hit around that $7,000 mark, minus fees and stuff like that through the system that we use for tracking and everything, our goal is to be able to give a $1,000 check to these organizations. And I mean, that's huge coming right up on the holidays for these organizations. So that's my Sunday Night Football pick saying that we're going to get it. And I hope we have 100% pick for that winning team type mindset. We're super close, and fingers crossed. Item-wise, we're sitting around close to 2,000 care items.
Wow.
And for this campaign, care items would include things like dog and cat food, pet toys, brushes, collars, wet pads for the shelters, and even things like cleaning supplies for the shelters, hand sanitizer, disinfecting wipes, things like that. So maybe necessarily a lot of items that maybe wouldn't necessarily think of, because your mind automatically goes to pets, but a lot of office supplies are needed for the organizations as well. Hours-wise, we're coming up very close to clocking in over 300 hours of service.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness.
We're almost at 300. We're getting there. So we'll see at the final week. So everything's going to be very, very close.
It's weird because, we've been talking about this for almost a year, right?
It is a year-long process for those
I mean?
that are trying to piece everything together, and not to pause you there, Paul.
No, it's fine.
But, once the campaign gets rolling, it goes quickly. That's half the year. That's like May or June all the way through the end of the year. But we maybe get a couple week off, maybe a couple weeks break, if you will. But then right around January, February, we're brainstorming again about what this next year's campaign is. So it really is a full-time campaign almost.
And I absolutely love being a part of this. And, I know that this is part of your job, but let me just ask you a really important question. Number one, thank you so much for doing all of this. You're just a wonderful representative of the school to these organizations. I mean, every time I talk to anyone about you, it's always like, oh, how's Curtis doing, And I tell them the same thing, like, we are so lucky to have you in this position. But what was it about this position that's so important to you? I mean, obviously, to be in community relations, you have to have sort of a philanthropic heart, if you will. But what is it about giving back to the community that takes it even beyond just being a good person or being a caring person, but literally your job to develop these relationships? So why was that something that was important to you for your career?
To me, it's kind of a third tier, if you will. For a number of years as a student, Central Penn gave so much to me, and then I wanted to make it my mission to give back. So that was just a two-way street. Well, then how can I use now the platform of the college to help give back to the community? So kind of growing it to that next step. Yes, there's a lot of love and passion for myself to the college, but now that I'm a staff member with the college, again, how can I represent and be a great steward or an ambassador of this institution and let other people know not only what we're doing and how they can become a student, but what we're doing for the community. And, maybe you already have a degree, still help us in our mission to help this year local area animal shelters, or next year ABC type organization. So, like I said, it's that third tier of how do we take it the next step further to get more people involved in all the good that we're doing.
But if it wasn't for you, and again, I want to give credit to our committee. Our committee is integral.
Yes,
But
very
you're
much
the
so.
one that is making it possible, providing opportunities to people, helping people get connected, whether it's monetarily or doing the drive-in drop-offs that happen throughout the year. I mean, if it wasn't for you, I probably wouldn't have been able to volunteer in this capacity, or maybe other people wouldn't have thought to donate money on behalf of this school. And that's what's really interesting to me. On an individual level, we all have an immense ability to change the things around us. But when you can bring an organization together of thousands of faculty, staff, students, and alumni, that is really something special. And we can really, really see this needle move across a regional level, beyond even just our Summerdale community or Lancaster communities, which is really incredible.
Absolutely. And Paul, I really appreciate the words, but I will keep on saying it is a team effort. I know what you're saying, and I appreciate it.
And also, too, Dalton, speaking back to, let's just say, the Challenger experience, because I know that you, obviously really appreciate it, and I appreciated you being there, but it wasn't just you, right? It was other people on the team. And like I said, when I talked to Coach Stern, he wants to get some more of the guys involved this year. Again, that just speaks to something that you just did it because it was something interesting and fun for you to do. But now, if we could have a couple more people out there would get maybe more individualized assistance. Maybe you could actually, instead of, maybe you could actually kind of teach them some things, teach them how to throw across the diamond, or how to get under a pop fly, or things like that. So, a couple more people can come. That can have a long-lasting opportunity for those players to develop their game.
Oh, for sure. Because I remember the one point, I forget what high school it was, a local high school, that the whole team showed up and helped volunteer at the Challenger Baseball, and they were just working, they were like with every single person there, and it was just really nice to see that. And then obviously with us, we are, college baseball team, so we obviously are held to a certain standard and like stuff like that. So we obviously, been around the block. I think if we did get the whole team involved, and we actually had pretty much, not all, but most of the players show up just to be there, and they can have a good time with it, they would be able to make more interpersonal connections with the actual players themselves, like you said. Because I remember a couple times where I was with one of the players there, and I was just sitting around the whole time, and it was just so funny just hearing them talk, and like how they, they're basically like us. It's just really cool to just be there in that situation and just see how they have a great time with it. And it really, like, it took me back to like the adolescence of it all, like the adolescence of me playing baseball when I was a little kid and I was falling in love with it. They really, really are in love with baseball, and they really have a great time out there.
They look up to you.
Yeah,
in a way, and I know it might not seem like it, like when we're on the field, but it's really quite amazing. And actually, some of them, a few of the players actually came over to community night back in April at FMB Field, so they actually got to see you all play on, at basically a minor league park. So it was really cool. But all of that being said, CPC Gives Back is a very important part of not only my experience here, but I hope many others' experiences here as well. Central Penn gives us up to 8 hours, I believe, a calendar year to volunteer in the community, and even some folks' bosses will even let them, volunteer even more. So if you didn't have a chance to be a part of it this year, we certainly encourage you to take advantage of it in 2023.
Fantastic. Better.
I'm just looking forward to, we are having a luncheon for the folks during week 11. So if anybody's interested in coming to that luncheon, you can always reach out to Curtis Voelker at centralpenn.edu, and he can get you connected with that. But it's just a wonderful opportunity to get together with the people, the organizations we have to support, and celebrate the teamwork that went into it.
Exactly. We'll be announcing the winning team of the CPC Gives Back competition. We'll be awarding the donation checks from the monies raised through CPC Gives Back, and we have items that have still been collected throughout the year that didn't make it to the first item drop-off early in the summer. So, excited to just give that round of support and really thank our local organizations for partnering with us. And Paul, to your mentioning of the fact about it's, really a regional thing, not just, right here in our backyard, right in Enola. Just wanted to rattle off real quick the 7 organizations of which we are supporting to really just give an idea of the regional footprint CPC Gives Back is impacting. So what we are supporting this year, the SPCA of York County, Adams County SCPA, Speranza Animal Rescue, Humane Society of Harrisburg Area, Humane League of Lancaster, Humane Society of Lebanon, and Finding Toby in PA, who actually serve statewide. So to kind of narrow this down, we're really supporting our 7 local area counties of Cumberland, Dauphin, Perry, and keep track with me here, Paul, in case I miss one there, Lancaster, Lebanon, York, and Adams.
That's it.
I think that's all 7,
That's
yeah.
it. And the entire state of Pennsylvania.
Exactly, with Finding
as
Toby,
well.
for sure.
Well, Curtis, I got to thank you so much. Your work with this is just really magnificent, and we've gotten such a wonderful amount of feedback. So I just want to thank you for all of your hard work, and look forward to 2023 in terms of what the next challenge will be.
And perhaps Dalton and the baseball team might be creating their own CPC Gives Back team. We'll see. And
That
just
would
a
be
side
really nice.
note, if we ever have a faculty, staff, student softball game again, could you guys come out and do a training session for us, for staff? I could have used that myself.
I mean, we'd be more than likely to help.
And Dalton, thank you so much, not only for being here today, but also sharing your experiences, not only with Challenger Baseball, but some of the other volunteering that you've done. It's really important that our students do get civically engaged, especially, as they're trying to build their resume, and also just wanting to give back to the community.
That's what I was going to say. You took the words right out of my mouth. Not only is just, again, something to put on the resume, it really is a really nice experience to go out and just anything, if you're interested in it at all, like me with Challenger, if you're interested in music, something like that, just anything that you can really, dig your claws into and really, make an impact. It's great.
Absolutely. All right. Well, special thanks goes out to Community Relations Director Curtis Voelker and Nightly News media reporter Dalton Kohler. That's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. So for the two of those gentlemen, I'm Professor Paul Miller, and we'll see you again next time on the Nightly News Podcast.